Can you play a guitar or a bass through a stereo receiver? Well, that's a valid question because, after all, guitar amplifiers are kind of expensive, so it would be a lot easier just to be able to plug your guitar straight into a stereo receiver that you may already have, or you can just buy very cheaply. I actually got this one for, I think, 10 bucks I paid for this, so at like a thrift store or something. So if you can play a guitar through, it'd be pretty rad. Well, this is actually something I did when I was younger, and I didn't have a guitar amp, or I didn't have a particularly loud guitar amp at the time. And yes, you can. Let's see how it actually sounds, though. Now, first things first. I have down here on the bottom, below this, some bookshelf speakers, and that's what I was originally going to show to do this video with. And I decided against it because after maybe 5 seconds of playing through it, I started to notice a very strong smell of burning voice coils. So, to avoid ruining my speakers, I stopped doing that. They should, in theory, be rated for enough watts, but one thing you'll find is that a lot of times when an amp is turned up all the way, it actually produces a little bit more than the maximum power it's rated for, so you have to have speakers that have a little bit of leeway in there. So I just plugged it into this cab over here, which is, it's got a PA speaker in it, but it works reasonably well as a guitar cab. The whole thing combined between the speakers and the plywood and then the this here maybe cost 60, 70 bucks. So it's a very cheap rig, and in theory it would be 100 watts because this is a 100-watt amplifier. But since I only have one speaker, it's not running in stereo, so it's only going to be 50 watts. I need a second speaker. So this receiver I have right here is an Akai, I believe is how you pronounce the brand. It's an AAV201. I found it in a thrift shop. It's a Goodwill or a Savers or something for 10 bucks. I think it's from the early 90s. It's made in Japan, and it's 100 watts, 50 watts per channel, so it'll put out 50 watts each side. And the important thing about it is that it has a phono channel. I'll get to why that's important in a little bit. But aside from that, nothing particularly noteworthy about it. It has a bit of 90s tricks on here. The volume is actually done with this trackpad thing on the bottom, is how you change the volume, which is kind of neat. And the way that I have it hooked up, I just have basically what I had lying around. This is not what I would do if I were doing a permanent setup to play with this all the time, but it's just a 1/4 inch to 8-inch adapter, and then from 8-inch to your component connectors, like the ones that are on the back of a TV. And I'll start off by plugging into the CD channel on here. And the way that I have it hooked up to the speaker is also like a temporary thing I have right now, just with some alligator clips, though I think the easiest way, if you wanted to permanently hook up a speaker up to one of these, would be to actually just get a speaker wire and cut the end and splice them and stick them in there. That's probably the easiest way to do it. So, when I first play it, it's not particularly loud. You got to crank it all the way to get some sound out of it. And then it tends to be very dark because this is designed to pull in a lot of lower frequencies that you would not normally expect out of a guitar amp. So, in order to get it to sound better, I'm going to turn the bass all the way down and the treble all the way up. And you'll find out it's still trebly. So I'm using the bridge pickup and coil tap, so it's like a single coil. And you actually don't get a bad sound out of it. It's still a bit quiet. It would be ideal if I had a boost pedal in front of this to get a little bit more power out of it. But with 2 speakers like this, I think you could play a show with this. And so that's what you can get out of the CD channel on there, playing a guitar into it. So ideally, you would have some sort of a pedal, or like particularly an EQ would be very helpful, or a boost pedal. I actually don't own any pedals, so I can't show with any of those. Or better yet, better than a pedal, one of those like amp simulator things. But remember how I talked about that phono channel earlier? Well, phono channels, or phono inputs, have a lot more boost on them, so you can kind of use them like a clean and a distorted channel. So I'm just going to switch this over to the phono input and kick that on. I'm actually going to drop the volume back a little bit, and now that I have this going, I can kind of use my guitar's volume knob a bit like a gain knob. Again, very dark, but as I pull it up, that will go away. And then shocking distortion on there, and that's again because it's picking up so much bass sound in there, and that makes it almost like dive out when you dig into the strings a little bit there. It would be a lot more advantageous here to have, again, an EQ, so you could hard cut a bit off that bass off, but do the best I can. Totally perfect, but we'll get you through in a pinch. So that's what it sounds like when you use one of these just straight with a guitar. Again, if you were to use some pedals on there, that would be helpful there. But since it's so low and heavy, how does it sound with a bass? Now I've got a bass and a bass cab. Interestingly, this bass cab actually has the same speaker type as the guitar cab I had a moment ago, but this is a much larger enclosure and it's ported. And I've got this bass here, so let's see what it sounds like. So to do this, I have the volume all the way up. I'm again in the phono channel because I'm trying to get enough gain to actually get the full volume of this amp, and I'm going to use the volume knob on the bass as the gain. Much better than with a guitar. I'm terrible at finger picking. I'm not much of a bass player, but I'll try. I think even for a bass, but it's not too far off. Now as far as clean headroom goes, 100 watts isn't a whole lot for a bass amp, plus considering that I'm only getting 50 because I've only got one cab, it's not the loudest. You wouldn't be able to play a very big show with this, although generally they're going to mic you if you need to be louder than that anyway, but... If you had a second cab, like you have one of those mix and match things where you have two separate different cabs types, like a 210 or a 115, of course why would you be doing that with this? But anyway, if you had a setup where you could use the stereo and have two separate cabs, I think this would actually be pretty workable for a bass amp. So is it actually up to doing this long term? Like would it overheat or something? A lot of times these sorts of solid state amps that are not designed to be turned up all the way don't handle the heat very well. I've heard of actually the PA head that I have is prone to that, though. It hasn't happened to me yet. So I can kind of depend. So if you have a really nice receiver like this, you may not want to use it for this purpose, because you might end up blowing it. But if you can just grab one for $10 at a thrift store, probably okay. This one here, by the way, I've been playing on it for a while earlier before I shot the video, just kind of noodling around, and actually my noodling was probably a lot better then when I wasn't on camera, as it always is. But it never had any problems with heating or overheating or anything like that. Then again, it wasn't really a whole concert's length, and plus it's kind of freezing in here, as evidenced by my jacket. But the worst situation for those is if you were to get a pedal and turn it up all the way, so you're getting a really strong, heavy distortion, and then you pull the output power down somewhat. So running like 70% volume at full clip on distortion is usually the worst thing for these, for reasons I'll get into in another video maybe. But anyway, as a backup, or just if you have nothing else to play with, you absolutely can play a guitar or bass through a receiver head. It's certainly not ideal, especially for guitar, but it actually, I would say, works pretty well for a bass. Thanks for watching.